Any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Ms. Coates.
Yes.
Ms. Weitzel.
Yes.
Mr. Amendola.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes. Final motion under Parks and Recreation. I'll entertain a motion to approve 2 fundraisers to be held on Saturday, May 31st, 2014, at 6 p.m., the Great American Duckout, and on Friday, July 18th, 2014, the Gala Under the Stars with a fee per person to be determined based on cost to be held at the Crafton Swimming Pool, and permission to provide both food and alcoholic beverages with proceeds to benefit craft and pool renovation projects.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on this motion?
The permission to provide alcoholic beverages, does this fall under the granting that we already have? The permit?
Yes.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Ms. Coates.
Yes.
Ms. Weitzel.
Yes.
Mr. Amendola.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes. Next on the agenda is discussion of old business. I think we spoke to the employee handbook and update. We still need council feedback on that. We're going to delay that another 2 weeks to get that feedback. I think is very important, as well as the code of ethics. We need more feedback on it. I think we're all in principle and agreement on there, but we need to review the language and update it accordingly if we see fit. The Comcast agreement renewal.
Can we put a timeframe on both the updates for that? So it
Yeah.
doesn't slip another 2 weeks, another month?
Well, the timeframe last time was 2 weeks, and
Right,
we didn't
right.
do it, right? So, at this point, here's what I would suggest we do, right? We'll give ourselves another 2 weeks, right, to the next working meeting. And then if we don't have any written feedback back from folks, we'll have an opportunity to discuss it again, right, at length.
So we're gonna discuss it in 2 weeks?
So we're discussing
I don't
on the
wanna discuss what
12th?
We already discussed.
Yeah, I don't think it's
We
fruitful to...
discussed it, but we didn't come to a consensus to have it on the agenda for this month.
Well, what
We didn't
we've-
come to a consensus. We need to discuss it more.
Well, but I think to facilitate the discussion, I think we should submit our feedback, right? We should all read it, right? Mr. Phillips gave some feedback, right?
Well, I'm curious about what committee got together and came up with this code of ethics? I mean, if they want to put out.
April came up with it.
So there was no committee, it's just the opinions of one person?
Well,
It's
she...
actually adopted at another borough,
Actually,
verbatim.
when this first came up, and I wasn't here at the last working meeting, but I had gone to, it came up right before the COG meeting, and Council of Governments, there's 18 surrounding governments that participate in this. So I just asked the question, do you have a code of ethics? And every single one of them had a code of ethics, so we're the
We
only
do
one.
too.
So,
We don't.
No, we don't have an individual code of ethics. We have one that's sponsored by the state that we all have to adhere to as elected officials, but we don't have a Crafton code of ethics. What Ms. Post is saying is that the other boroughs actually have their own code of ethics that, you know, doesn't compete with the state one, but
No.
is a further clarification of how they're going to conduct
It's
themselves in
complementary.
meetings.
We have one from 1999. We have it in our packet here.
None of us have voted on that, and it's never been enforced as long as I've been on council.
There's a code of ethics, Crafton Borough Code of Ethics. It's signed by the borough,
Who's
the
it signed
council
by?
president and
Who was that at the
the
time?
borough manager. Pardon me?
Who was who signed it?
Chuck Worcester was the president and Rich Cron was the manager.
Well, then here's what we should do.
so,
It was-
so,
In
I'm just saying.
1999, and so if you could, do we want to have this discussion now or do
No,
you
then
want
what-
to wait 2 weeks?
No, what I was asking all
Because I have lots
council,
of questions about it.
what I was asking council members, right, is to submit their feedback. So here's what I'm hearing you say. April hasn't submitted a code of ethics, that she has a draft. We apparently had one, right? I did not know we had one, right? So we had one that's been around since 1999. Let's read both council code of ethics, right? And merge the two and make sure that we're happy with the language. I don't think we're in disagreement that we should have one, right? The only thing that we're in disagreement about is what that thing should say, right? So now we have two drafts, let's merge them together and move forward, vote on it.
yeah, but how's it gonna be enforced?
Yeah, we talked about this at the discussion meeting, and I agree with Mr. O'Brien. You know, it's just,
Are we gonna enforce, are we gonna police ourselves ethically? Isn't that a conflict of interest?
Can you tell me the difference between the 1999 and this one that you presented? I mean, are things different
Probably
now?
20 years.
20 years.
I feel like it's the same kind of, in other instances when something has come up where, where we've looked and there's been an ordinance that was in 1970 and so, or 1990, and with anything, we need to update with modern circumstances. So, I think it's good practice to revisit some of those laws. If you look at, there are some laws, not necessarily on our books, but, in New Jersey, you can't dance in the streets. I think that may be archaic, so it's good practice to
In
revisit.
1999,
Stock
we didn't
taking.
have laptops, we didn't have tablets, we didn't have mobile phones.
Yes.
I can go on.
Mr. President, can I,
Well-
I just ask a question? Has anybody here reviewed the 1999 one that was approved by council?
Yes.
No, besides you.
Oh.
Has anyone else?
No.
I have not.
So you have no idea what's in it?
That
Right,
was the packet
right.
that was given to
Has-
us
has-
last month.
Next question, has anybody reviewed what April presented?
Yes. I have.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so you have what was presented by April, but there's one that's already on the book.
Right,
So I think before the next meeting, everybody should read a copy of the 1999 ethics should be presented to everybody so they can go over it and understand what's in there, reread what April presented, and then have an intelligent, open discussion on
Ethics.
how you move,
Yeah.
how you move from there.
Does anyone in
It's
principle
like beating a dead horse.
yeah,
you know?
anyone in principle disagree with that?
Disagree with what the mayor just described?
Well, that's what I tried to describe. So, yeah,
Manager Callen gave you the whole packet, including the one from 99, April's, a few other items that was on March 21st, so all council does
Right.
have all that.
it's
So
incoming.
we'll be 2 months in.
yeah, I did not see the other one, so I certainly have to review it. But back to my point and now the mayor's point. Are we in agreement that we're gonna read both and marry them up, right? Have a discussion about marrying them up, and if there's no differences, then no action need to be
Yeah,
taken
right.
because we'll keep the one we have, right?
That's
But
exactly what.
if April's
yes.
draft actually has a material benefit or something we agree with, right? There's no harm in adding it to a code of ethics that we adopt.
Agreed. And of course, the solicitor's gonna review it, right? Or have you already reviewed all of this?
We'll ask him, if we feel it's necessary, we'll ask him to review it once we agree on what the language is. I don't want the solicitor looking at language we ourselves haven't even agreed to.
Yeah,
because that would be a
we-
waste.
How could we vote on
Yeah,
this
we
tonight
haven't looked at
if the solicitor hasn't reviewed it?
Well, it may make good, it's good sense to have the solicitor look at, because certainly we don't want to agree anything in the ethics that would contradict the ethics we've already sworn to. So it's a good idea to let him look at it, but only after we have finished language.
Excuse me, Mary, would you mind directing me to what date that was posted in Cubby? There's so much information in there, I want to make sure that,
It was dated
March
March
21st.
21st, and maybe the March 24th meeting?
March 24th.
Did you say come back?
Minutes, agenda matrix,
Correspondence,
correspondence,
written
written
reports,
reports, bill addendum, manager's
there's
report.
10 files there.
The one that probably has 100 pages is probably the one.
310?
When you first opened it.
This one?
No, let's go back to the very beginning.
Oh. Oh, Cubbies? That's my cubby. Miscellaneous docs, archive.
Okay, I'll look through
You
it
gotta start
in
getting
my free
your
time.
copies and papers so you can read them,
Or he just emailed us to you, I don't know, it's just for council.
Where did you get it?
It's in a meeting
I
packet.
got it in a
It
meeting.
is in the meeting packet?
Yeah.
Alright. It's gotta be buried somewhere because I haven't seen it either.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
we'll find
I read through these whole things, so.
Oh, you know what he said for the April 14th working session. so
April
maybe it's in the
14th.
April
Oh, and I
Let's
wasn't.
take a look at that
yeah.
real quick. Then we'll all know where it's at. Code of Ethics PDF, and is this one,
Yeah.
that's the state one.
Yeah, they're all in there.
It is, it's Code of Ethics.
The state covers the code of ethics. I
It's
mean,
under the
if we have a problem
414
with something,
meeting
that's what-
packet. It is code of ethics, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's the 7th item added out of 11.
State has a code of ethics. If we have a problem, I would go to the state, you know.
Oh, wait, so let's make, I want to be very clear. So on that code of ethics, there's the state one, and then there's the proposed one.
No,
No?
there's a state, there is one existing from 1999 in Crafton, and then there's a proposed one that Miss April is
Oh.
proposing here.
All right, I see.
And actually, the first one mentioned in this was the one that's due here in my office by May 1st.
There's one, okay, on page 9, it says Code of Municipal Ethics, 1999. And that is a page and a half signed by Charles Booster.
Right.
All right, and then what follows that is April's. So I
Yes.
read April's, I did not read that page and a half. So, same thing applies, let's read them both, right? And we might as well refamiliarize ourselves with what we've already sworn to, right, in the state one, because that's also in there. And we certainly don't want to compete with that. And we'll discuss it at length.
Yeah, I think that's the way we should go, sure.
And if I could reiterate, that first document is due in my office by May 1st. I don't know if Bob provided it to you in this format or
We all have to sign that again?
Is that every year?
anyone that was an elected official last year.
That's everyone but April and I.
No, you were elected last, you weren't elected last year, you're still an elected official. You have to do
Mr.
it.
Amendola and Ms. Amendola don't have to, they weren't on council last year, we're elected.
Oh,
It's for the previous year.
Yes,
Okay.
2013.
We didn't have-
All right, we have to do that.
You have it in the office.
Or someone gonna send it to us?
Well, it's actually in that packet if you want.
Yeah, it's in that packet, Mr. Callen sent it to us, reminding us.
I mean, I have,
I'm talking about the one that, the actual document where the carbon copy is made.
I have the carbon ones here, but he had provided it as part of his packet due by May 1st.
Okay.
You have the carbon copies in the office.
Can you just get them before tonight's over and we can?
All right. The last old business, what is this one? The Comcast agreement renewal. Do we, Jamie, is that why is this on here?
Touched upon that.
I touched upon it in the manager's report,
Right.
and just the fact that there's an excerpt in a letter from Comcast dated in 2011 that suggests public participation regarding the franchise agreement. And so we will put that into next month for the work session, so that we make sure we give the public an opportunity to speak to that franchise agreement.
Which is required by the law that enables you to go through an informal process of
Correct.
renewing your franchise agreement.
Okay.
So before we can sign that, we have to give the public an opportunity to speak to that contract.
So contract is still good till August 20th.
Correct.
So will they be speaking at our working meeting or
Yeah.
the working meeting? Very good. Okay. All right, that concludes old business. We'll go to additional citizen comments if there are any. 3 minutes.
All right,
You're on the clock.
I'm on the clock.
It's 8:30.
2 minutes 55.
Good evening, Philip Lavasser, 401 Clearview Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I wanted to clarify a couple things. One, with the planning commission, we were interviewed by Mrs. O'Connell and the borough manager at that time. So I just want to make that very clear. We actually had to submit documentation, have a phone conversation, and were invited in for a formal interview before we were presented to the council before appointment. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was informed of that. Obviously, there's a lack of institutional knowledge being passed on. So I just want to make sure things like this are taken up by our interim manager and the next manager, such as, public information requests, making sure those gaps are addressed. My next item is the issue that I've been bringing to council for the past couple months here has been about the 401, about the trees in front of my property, 401 Clearview on Clearview Avenue. I just would appreciate a little more transparency in the motion and the discussion about the cost benefit between alternate 1 and alternate 2, because there was, we as a public have not seen any of the numbers. I just was curious, there's no detail, and the motion in itself is vague. And it seems as if there's some wiggle room in there of, is it both alternate, both options are approved, as in the original option to clear cut the trees, to alternate one, which is less, a couple $1,000s less, and I was curious, it'd been nice to see some cost benefit detail in this information packet on what the cost was between the original plan versus alternate one, and alternate two, of which, weren't, I don't know if it was presented to council, but the last
Yes.
meeting,
That's why I asked for it to be clarified for your benefit. We didn't go into every single detail of all the bid options. I tried the best, have the engineer explain it outright.
okay, yeah, because and then when I got here, there weren't even enough copies of the actual agenda to actually review, and so I found, I was able to get one, but had I known there was so little detail, maybe I would have brought it up before you guys even passed the motion, because I didn't even realize you guys were motioning on this. Anyway, thank you, sticking around to my 3 minutes, but we do appreciate alternate one being approved, if that's what the, seems like that's gonna be moving forward in
Yes.
the language. Just wanna make that clear for the public, because in the language in the motion actually sort of seems a little vague. So I just wanna make sure we're clear, alternate one was being chosen, and if possible, could be made public what the the cost benefit analysis between option one, original bid option, alternate option 1 and 2.
There were just bid options, there was never an original.
There wasn't an original bid because we just had the bid opening. So it was speculation on what it would cost versus the actual bids coming in.
Okay.
Like, when they did the initial cost analysis in 2012, it was around $250,000.
Right.
So,
So it's hard to quantify the
speculate.
savings, because we never put it out for an actual bid to say what the project would cost.
2 years ago.
Yeah, you could have.
Yeah, well, I'm
anticipation.
just looking at it says Clearview Avenue Road Reconstruction Project Phase 3 base bid, and then it says alternate bid number 1 and alternate bid number 2, and I was just curious what the sort of breakdown, so it's 273, 271, and then what was alternate 2? And-
it's there. The
It's there.
$2,000
Alternate
is
two
the
was
cost
talked
saving.
by the engineer.
Yeah.
Alternate bid number 2 makes the street
Can you
one
clarify?
way.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
I have it right here. The original bid, the first option, which was 19-foot wide road and
Yeah.
eliminating the trees, that came in at, the low bid came in at $273,536. $273,536 and 74 cents. Alternate number 1, which was to make the road a foot narrower and save the trees, that came in at $271,406 and 74 cents. And then the second alternate number 2, which was to make the road a 12-foot wide, one-way road with the rain garden, saving the trees, that came in at $273,564. So that was a couple thousand more than the alternate that we're going with.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
Does
I
that clear
just
it
was curious why it wasn't discussed and put on the actual motion, so somebody could actually, so the council members could actually discuss among themselves.
We get
Well,
this
we
in the
get-
packet.
yeah,
We
we-
know what we're.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And then-
that's very detailed for it. That's why I said when we were looking for that one item, I said, well, where is it? Because there's 11 items. And
Right.
each item has
Okay.
multiple pages.
Yeah, and the last comment was, what will be the actual, with the whole concern about it being a two-way cartway? It's not a two-way cartway currently, it's actually technically a one-way, and so I was curious, now that we're making the road 18 feet wide, does that call into, what will then happen? Do we have the opportunity to bring to council does the engineering firm want a no parking zone for 3 spots along that wet roadway, or, because the initial concern was that a busway, that 2 city buses won't be able to, go side by side. Obviously, we all know that won't happen on Clearview Avenue.
How many streets can that happen in?
Pardon me?
In Crafton, 2 buses.
No,
by
no,
each other.
it can't, exactly, completely agree with you, but that was the initial argument. And I'm just saying, a lot of people are saying, well, when will council make that a one-way street? And that had been,
I think based on what we decided today, we're not making it one-way
right,
street, right? With you got one, with alternate one, we can narrow it to 18 feet, correct me if I'm wrong, it's gonna be a two-way street, and we're not considering a one-way street at this point.
at this point. Okay, that's,
I guess this question is parking. Are you gonna ask for, is the engineer gonna ask for a no parking of 3 vehicles there, or what?
because of
Why
the,
would we
because
do
of the
that?
bend.
It's not
that's-
gonna be needed?
No.
I'm not the traffic engineer, and unfortunately, he's not here, but I believe at the last meeting we were here, he said 18 foot was the minimum that would be required. And that's what we brought it down to, was the 18 feet as recommended by the traffic engineer to allow for two-way, or if you have somebody parked.
Two-way and parking.
Well, not all at the same time. You won't have that width to have an actual car parked in two-way. It's just like it is now. If somebody's parked there and you see them coming, you wait, you let them go, then you go, then you proceed.
Right, I'm
So
just saying,
nothing's
in general,
changing.
on that turn, it's still the same.
But just to set the record straight, right, we're considering this a closed matter now,
Yeah.
right? We've decided what we decided, alternate one, two-way, with parking, and there's nothing else on the table, right? You know, it's a
Sounds good.
closed matter.
Thank you.
The trees are safe.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.